No, I have not. No. No, I have not. Look, I got to run a city. I mean, I don't have time to sit in a trial, but let me just say this. Well, I have not had a chance to, I don't even get a chance to read all the articles that you write. I mean, I don't have time to just read articles, but we do hear some of the testimony that's taken place.
That response quickly made it to Twitter, where people questioned her statement, forcing the mayor to clarify it on social media. The mayor wrote her statement was distorted and, quote, "Of course, I am well aware of the ongoing trial of officers formerly part of the Gun Trace Task Force and the deeply disturbing allegations arising from the trial. What I do not have time for is to follow every report, tweet, or post about the trial and related testimony, however outrageous." Mayor Catherine Pugh went on to say the reason there is a consent decree is because of some of the activity that has been portrayed by a few members of the police department, and that the majority of police go to work every day to protect the city. Now, the mayor says she has been meeting with Commissioner-designate D'Souza regularly and has full confidence in him. She says he has a plan for staffing and reorganization within the department, and we learned today that he is bringing back several Baltimore Police Department ranking officers to command. Returning will be Ed Jackson, who served on the Community Oversight Task Force for the consent decree, Thomas Casella, the former director of security at Horseshoe Casino, and Andre Bonaparte. Live in the studio, Lisa Robinson, WBAL TV 11 News.